please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Shireen Bhan, and here's the top story that we are tracking at this hour. ICICI Bank's chairman M.K. Sharma is set to address the media, this after a controversy over the loan sanction to Videocon by ICICI Bank. Now remember, just yesterday, the chairman of ICICI Bank, M.K. Sharma, had put out a detailed clarification on behalf of ICICI, suggesting that the board reposed its faith in Chanda Kochhar and that the board had in fact done its own audit of this particular account and found nothing improper. Now, those are the questions that CNBC TV18 had sent to the ICICI Bank chairman M.K. Sharma on the 27th of March, and ICICI Bank's response, which has of course now been made public, was that there has been no quid pro quo in giving that loan to Videocon, that the loan to Videocon was part of a consortium, that ICICI Bank was not a lead in that consortium. In fact, that ICICI Bank's loan stood at about 3,250 crores. We had asked if ICICI Bank's board was satisfied that Chanda Kochhar was not conflicted while sanctioning those loans. ICICI Bank's response was there is no question of any conflict of interest and the board has full confidence and reposed its full faith in Chanda Kochhar. That was the response that ICICI put out publicly yesterday. Let's go across to Lata now. Lata, we are standing by now for the ICICI Bank chairman M.K. Sharma to speak with us, but this is a continuation of the response that's come in from ICICI Bank yesterday, suggesting that the bank's internal audit has given an all clear to Chanda Kochhar.
Shri, has become a perception issue. Two deals happened concomitantly. The space between through some group to Mr. Deepak Kochhar and ICICI giving a loan to Videocon happened probably within a space of 6 months of each other. So the perception now is becoming whether it was a quid pro quo. And there is also another perception in the market which cannot be warded off very easily, that CEOs of banks are very powerful people. Boards come and go, but a powerful CEO pretty much can, push what they want. This is a perception and it's a reality. Mr. Aditya Puri has been on the HDFC Bank board for 25 years now. Board members come and go, a chairman come and go, but the MD carries on. Likewise, Ms. Kochhar would have seen, several chairmen come and go, several board members come and go. The power of the MD over the management team also is considerable. And therefore, the perception will be really, all these safeguards enough. Can MD still have his or her way is something which, now the board has to address. The board has to address this perception. It is easy to answer facts. How do you answer perception?
Yes, how do you respond to what seems to be a perception issue at this point in time, but also in terms of the facts, there are some questions that remain unanswered, while the ICICI chairman has in that clarification yesterday answered questions with respect to the loan given by ICICI Bank to the Videocon group. There are some unresolved questions when it comes to the transaction between Venugopal Dhut and Deepak Kochhar that would require further answering. But Sandeep Parekh, founder of FinSec Law Advisors, also joins us on the phone line. Sandeep, we are waiting for the ICICI Bank chairman M.K. Sharma to speak with us. But on the face of it, and I do want to highlight the fact that the allegations of impropriety when it comes to the Videocon loan and Chanda Kochhar and her husband Deepak Kochhar were first brought to light in 2016. What we're now seeing being recirculated is, in a sense, a revisit of the allegations that were first put forward in 2016. One would obviously imagine that this is India's largest private sector bank. When those allegations were made public in 2016, the regulator may have asked ICICI Bank questions. The board at that point in time would have asked ICICI Bank questions. And if you go by what the chairman has said in that statement yesterday, the internal review that has been done of this account, I would imagine that that internal review would perhaps have also happened in 2016. Of course, you know, there was no clarification that was put out then by the board. But what are the key questions that you would like answers to, Sandeep?
So, Shireen, I think the answers which they gave yesterday are exactly the ones which we don't need any answers to. I mean, we really don't need answers to how big the loan was. 3,000 is apparently a pittance. The 3,000 crores is apparently a pittance according to them. It's only 10% of the entire loan. These are completely irrelevant questions. I think the key question is whether and in what manner money or shares of a company were handed over without any consideration to the husband of the managing director of the bank, which has in fact lent significant sums to a particular group, which is actually the gifter or the donor of these essentially shares of a company. So I think that is the key question which has been deflected. In the Express story also carries the responses, and this is pretty much what they've been ducking. So I think they need to come clean on it. I'm not saying that she's guilty or anything, but at the same time, the board has to be very, very clear. What are they're on with their shoulders up instead of ducking them and only answering the convenient questions.
But Sandeep, you said that it's irrelevant, the loan amount and so on and so forth. But, if the chairman of the board is suggesting that in their assessment, as part of the review process that they've conducted, that the checks and balances were followed when this loan was given to Videocon by ICICI Bank as part of a consortium, and they have not been able to find any reason to believe that there was quid pro quo, then it begs the question about a transaction that has happened between Deepak Kochhar and Venugopal Dhoot, and whether the bank should be answering those questions. We've lost that line with Sandeep Parekh. Mr. Gupta, let me come across to you, sir. What are the questions that you would like answers to in this matter? Because it involves a private party, which is Deepak Kochhar, associated to Chanda Kochhar. He is her husband. But the bank's chairman yesterday, in a clarification, coming out and saying that in its own assessment and in its own review, it had found that there was no reason to believe that there was any quid pro quo when it comes to the sanctioning of the loan to Videocon. Now, what are the questions that you would like answers to, Mr. Gupta?
See, I would say very clearly that it is a case where a husband and wife both are professionals. They are engaged in their own work. Now, I would say that I would never question a person based on rumors or based on anything, because it takes ages to build a reputation and seconds to destroy it. Now, the question that is there, that there are allegations that what Deepak Kochhar has done with Videocon Dhoot, is it improper, and whether it is anyway linked to the loan that ICICI Bank gave. Now, what ICICI Bank has given a clarification. As far as ICICI Bank is concerned, they have examined each and every aspect of it, and they found there is nothing abnormal or nothing which is in deviation from their norms in giving loan to Venugopal Dhoot. So, as far as Chanda Kochhar's role as a bank chairperson is concerned, so far as information is there, it isn't clear. Now, the question that is being asked is whether she was also instrumental in getting the deal between Videocon and Deepak done or not. Nobody has an answer to it. Now the question is that if I am in a position here as a chairperson and whatever I have done within this bank is not wrong, then you cannot blame me. That is one aspect. Now, unless until you find a link between the two, and which they said that there is no quid pro quo. Now, again, I would say that the bank's investigation is very limited, and it cannot be equated with the investigation of any investigative agency. So far as it is concerned, the other question is being raised that yesterday bank said very clearly that the committee which sanctioned the loan, she was not chairperson of that committee. But then the question comes whether she, whether she was part of the committee.
Yeah, Mr. Gupta, you know, what I wanted to ask you is that I'm sure the reply given by ICICI clearly states that there are several parties involved when a large loan is being sanctioned, including a credit committee where independent members of the board are a majority and the non-executive the board is the chairman. So they made it pretty clear that the processes involved, even if Ms. Kochhar was involved while sanctioning the loan, there are so many other extremely important people. So that has been clarified by ICICI. But can they still remove the perception that if it is as the date, the date seems to be emerging, that Deepak Kochhar got practically 64 crores free from Videocon. If he got it free from Videocon, then it becomes an embarrassment, isn't it? Even if the loan was sanctioned by many other people, that the MD's relative took such a large loan or a gift from a borrower. Will it be easy for, can this be addressed by ICICI at all? Or do you require someone like the Reserve Bank or, the MCA to clear the air?
Okay, now you got to get into one by one.
Yeah.
See, if I give you 64 crore, you give me 64 crore, there is nothing wrong with it unless until there is some other transaction linked to it. If it is a very pure deal. Now the question is that first, I do not know whether 64 crore benefit was given to Deepak Kochhar or not, but assuming it is given, unless until there is a link of this deal with the deal of ICICI Bank or any other deal of ICICI Bank or any other deal that got materialized, then only we can raise questions. Of course, very clearly, a doubt will come very clearly in the mind that if some business house is giving somebody who is my relative a benefit of 64 crore, then the question will come, why and what for? And that question still remains. But we got to
Sandeep, we lost your line. We lost your line. And, the point, as Mr. Gupta was pointing out, and that was the question that I was asking you as well. I mean, beyond telling us once again, as they did in that clarificatory statement yesterday, that there was checks and balances that were followed, due process, due diligence was done while sanctioning that loan to Videocon. What can we expect from Mr. M.K. Sharma, and how can he clear the air, so to speak, on the transaction that has happened or may have happened between Deepak Kochhar, as is being alleged, and Venugopal Dhoot?
See, before I answer that, really the focal point is not the process which are followed. I think the key focus is why somebody would give 64 crores to a third person. Have any of us
ever received more than 64 rupees from a non-family member? Sure, but just once again, for the benefit of everybody who's watching, that is the allegation that that has been made by
which has not been denied. Which has not been denied at any point.
Yeah.
If you see the Express article, it has not been denied. So let's take that as a fact that those transactions have taken place and they have not been denied at all. Why would somebody do that? I mean, that's kind of the crux of the issue. And I think there's a responsibility on the board to investigate that aspect and not just focus on their internal process and that loans were given after following due processes of eminent people.
No, but if they say, one second, Sandeep. If the board says that there is no question of quid pro quo or nepotism as is being alleged, then I would imagine that they have looked at this allegation, because this allegation has been made in 2016 as well.
Yeah, so if you look at the response yesterday, they actually make a very cute response saying that they have not made any loans to any of the persons who's being the donor. So essentially they're saying the promoter is not a borrower of ICICI Bank, which is relevant to this whole inquiry. Point is whether that person, companies have been given loans as a quid pro quo for, giving a gift to the husband of the managing director. followed or
but
not.
Sandeep,
Lata, you had a question?
how would
We all know that processes
Sandeep,
can be compromised.
Sandeep, you will have to appreciate ICICI Bank's position over here. How can they investigate this at all? What is their legal standing to ask Mr. Dhoot and Mr. Kochhar what was the transaction between you all? They don't have a locus standi. Why don't they even answer them?
No, I'm not saying they should ask Mr. Dhoot. First of all, they can ask Mr. Dhoot because he is still their borrower. But more importantly, they need to ask their managing director and ask her to appear before an external committee of investigators, private investigators, for example, or forensic accountants, whatever. Just go to the roots of what the issue is of why was that gift given. I think simple as that. I don't think you need to get into what processes followed for giving a loan. And to say that 3,000 crores is a small amount is, I think, just laughable.
No, they have
No,
not said it
absolutely.
as
We will
small.
need to
They have
see
only
and we
said
will try
that,
and...
They have not said it as small.
No,
All
we
they are
will need to
saying
get...
They've said 10%. It's only 10%. So it sounds like they're kind of making a mockery of the amount.
Okay, we'll try and see if we can get Mr. Sharma to clarify once again whether that issue that Sandeep Parekh and J.N. Gupta are raising, and that is the issue of the 64 crore rupees and what almost seems like a gift that was given to Deepak Kochhar, whether that was adequately examined by ICICI Bank when it conducted its own internal audit and gave the clean chit to Chanda Kochhar. Here from the chairman of ICICI Bank, M.K. Sharma. Remember, yesterday ICICI Bank has put out a clarification answering or sort of responding to the rumors and the reports that have been doing the rounds on the allegations linking Chanda Kochhar and her husband Deepak Kochhar to the Videocon group, to Venugopal Dhoot. And at the heart of the matter is a loan of 64 crore rupees that was given to New Power, which was a company of Deepak Kochhar, from Supreme Energy Private Limited, which was 99.9% owned by Dhoot. Now, we're still waiting to hear from our colleague Ritu Singh, who is at the ICICI Bank headquarters in Mumbai. I don't know whether we have Ritu with us. Do we have Ritu with us? We'll get to Ritu in just a second. But Sandeep, going back to how you see this progressing, because, I'm looking at, of course, what has been put out by way of the Express article. As we pointed out earlier, in 2016, there was an InfraLive blog post that pretty much talked about the same allegations. We are also given to understand that perhaps the regulator has, in fact, looked at this particular account. But what exactly have they looked at? Whether they examined this question of 64 crore rupees or not is an unanswered question, and we would need the regulator, or at least ICICI Bank, to give us clarification on that. What were the specifics that were examined? But our understanding is that perhaps the regulator did have a look at this in 2016 as well. From a regulator's perspective, Sandeep, what is it that you expect?
So I think the first level of regulation should be at the board itself, and let's look at the conference today if they've done a reasonable job. From the perspective of regulators, I think they will need to dive in much deeper in case the board has not asked the right questions. So they'll have to figure out, the quid pro quo, if there was any, whether such large, and again, 65 crores is just one sum. The annual report values the same company at 1,000 crores, which is now owned by the spouse. So they'll have to look at the quantum as well of the gift, and why was that gift made. If they find reasonable reasons why the gift was made, of course, they can close it, but it's a very, very unusually large amount for a gift to a non-family member.
I also want to point out that there is a group, the Indian Investors Protection Council. Arvind Gupta is a trustee of that. In fact, they've written to the Prime Minister. This letter is dated the 15th of March 2016. And as I pointed out, this is when the first we saw of these allegations being brought to light. And in the letter to the Prime Minister, Dr. Arvind Gupta, who is part of the Indian Investors Protection Council, talks about the specifics of the Videocon Group's dealings with ICICI Bank's Managing Director, CEO Chanda Kochhar, and family-owned New Power Renewable Group steered by her husband Deepak Kochhar, and goes on to make the allegations that we've of course been discussing in detail. But we do need to seek more clarity from the ICICI Bank board on specifically what were whether they looked at all of the allegations that were made by Dr. Arvind Gupta in 2016, whether that issue, as Sandeep Parekh was pointing out, of 64 crores, which was fully convertible debentures, that was an issue that was looked at and addressed, whether adequate clarification had come in on that particular issue. Those are going to be questions that we will put forward to M.K. Sharma. Ritu, at the ICICI Bank headquarters. Ritu, of course, the bank's closed today, but any update on how soon we could expect this to start?
Well, Shireen, any time from now, the chairman of ICICI Bank, Mr. M.K. Sharma, is expected to hold a press briefing to clarify all of these rumors circulating around, the kickbacks that Chanda Kochhar and her husband have received from loans that they gave to the Videocon Group and the Dhoot family, the various allegations that you just outlined. But of course, ICICI Bank did give out a statement yesterday clarifying that, there are various loans that were given to the Videocon Group, but this was in a consortium that ICICI Bank had advanced these loans. Their share was merely 10% of the total 40,000 crores that was sanctioned in 2012. They also said Chanda Kochhar was not really the chairperson of the committee that sanctioned these loans to begin with. So all of these clarifications have been released by ICICI Bank. But the chairman today is going to answer more questions. There are several questions like you raised about the 64 crore rupees, specifically the convertible debentures. In fact, I think Mr. Sharma is here, so we'll hear from him very, very shortly.